Hello once again, and this time we are going to do some editing. This one is the big one that I've been threatening that I was going to do for quite some time, and I'm finally getting the opportunity to do it. So first off, let's go ahead and listen to Chapter 6 in The Blood Witch. You're not going to be able to find it on the channel, but I'm going to play for you a segment towards the beginning of it, and then explain why it needed to be edited. It was one of the good things that my editor pulled off right away. Here we go.
Most men were decent folk, so it was with the banners. But it was inherent with death and warfare that the sick and the evil men would enlist. A handful of men signed on just to be able to legally kill. These men were accepted, but were watched and kept from promotions as much as possible. A few men joined for looting, and the towns and villages that were conquered often provided plunder. These men, if caught, were executed. The king wanted to win the hearts of the liberated oppressed. Plunder went against that philosophy and hence against the king. Then there was a few degenerate monsters that crept in for sexual advantages. These too were executed if caught, but there are always a few. This would make Veronica a target, so the personnel officer named Peter Godfrey would make sure that the honored Trotter had armed guards, a very wise move, and one that he felt grateful for the moment Veronica presented to the mobile office. It was basically a military tent like all others, except it had a rug and the door was flanked by the colors of the Banner Division. "You must be our new Sawbones. Welcome. I know your family's..."
Alright, here is where we continue. This is how it is now, and you'll notice there's a rearrangement of things. At a later time that day, Veronica presented to his mobile office. It was basically a military tent like all others, except it had a rug, and the door was flanked by the colors of the Banner Division. "You must be our new Sawbones. Welcome. I know your family's reputation, but I still hope you will not be too put upon by all the pain and suffering that awaits," said Peter Godfrey, the personnel officer. He was a family man himself, with 3 sons and 2 granddaughters. He would never dream of sending one of his children off to war until at least the age of 18. But he wasn't a Trotter, who devoted most of their lives to service. "I have been trained for several years to help. It's what Trotters are known for, and I can't be the one to ruin my family's reputation and traditions. But I do thank you dearly, kind sir, for your concern. Now, where do you need me to be? I'm ready to get started." Most men are decent folk. So it was with the banners. But it was inherent with death and warfare that a few sick and evil men would enlist. It was impossible to determine who were the odd few among so many, but caution and prudence were always valued. Peter had no idea that he would have a beautiful girl of just 16. He thought wisely that this could be a problem. He wished to prevent any harassment, teasing, or abuse of any kind that would be easily brought upon someone as young as Veronica. Okay. Now you notice this one has some serious changes, and we're going to go off on them one by one. First off, there's the introduction in the tent. That does occur in the first one. Those of you who went through the Blood Witch before will know that the introduction did happen, although it was organized differently. When I talked about the quality of some of the bad men in the original writing, it was placed earlier before Veronica and Peter had met. My editor, rightly so, said you really should move this later on after the meeting where Peter actually gets a good look at Veronica and says, "You know what, just to be safe, let's give you a guard and set things in order so that you won't have any difficulties." The other thing is that AG basically is a nation of, for the most part, good men, but there will be a few that come in. Now, I had painted the picture pretty dark, and I did it for a reason. And I kind of compromised, where I took out some of that severe darkness for two reasons. One, I could save that for later in the book, which is fine. The other thing is that I didn't want the army of Ag to look as dark as I had originally painted it, and it was, like I said, rightly pointed out by the editor that should be corrected. So you have now the fixed version. It's not completely done, but that's as close as it's going to be when the book actually gets printed. So there you go. Another editing and a little bit more of logic of placing, pacing, and having continuity within the universe that you're setting, because like I'd said before, it was a little too dark and a little too more inclusive of that darkness for people who were supposed to belong to a very good society. Alright, I hope this one helped.